Welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. This is Donna, Iona, Drozda at Wren House Studio, and we are exploring the basics of the creative energy levels, starting with 0 and moving up through 9. We're going to be placing a sort of a circle around all of our investigations when we get to the end of these levels. So fear not, we are going somewhere. We're on a journey. We all have heard that wonderful quotation that it's the journey, not the destination. And one of the things that I've learned is it's the destination and it's the path we're on as we're traveling. It's all so exciting and it's taking us somewhere. Step by step, bit by bit. We're going somewhere, but where are we going? We're going to investigate the 4th level of energy today. And when we are in the 4th level of energy, we have crossed a boundary line. When we go to our demo in a few minutes, we'll be reviewing that point where most of us spend our entire existence. It's not even a life. It's just sort of like slog. And we never know why we're here. We never know why we're doing what we're doing or who we're being. And we never quite feel like we fit. We don't have enough. We don't do enough. We are not enough. All that stuff that keeps us sort of in a holding pattern for our entire life. So what we're doing in looking at each of these creative energy levels is recognizing that this is a very, very ancient and well-timed system that allows us to bring ourselves back into congruence, back home again. When we're at home, we can go anywhere. If we don't know where we're at, then we're all over the place and we can never really settle. So by following this ancient pathway, as we say, from the base of the spine up to the top of the head, and then even beyond that, what we're doing is we're creating a personal space that I like to say makes us or connects us or allows us to consider the idea of being a healthy cell in the body of the universe. So we can either allow ourselves to find that direction, however it comes to us. There's no one way. We're all here to individuate. And then at the same time, once we have our sense of individuation, which is what the circle symbol represents in Angeles Arian's extraordinary work in her Signs of Life as a cultural anthropologist, she found that the circle is the most paradoxical of the energy fields. If you go back to our 0 point, and there's a link in the description of this video, so you can return and review the 0 point. It's the 0 point that is the most qualifying for us as individuals. It reminds us that we came here to be whole. We arrived whole. Then we tend to forget our sense of wholeness. And what we want to do is bring ourselves back into congruence. So there's, as Carl Jung said, all roads lead to the truth, provided we dig deeply enough. And so in this series, we're just simply allowing ourselves to dig deeper into the idea of climbing a ladder of creative energy. Imagining that there is a snake coiled at the base of our spine that is waking up with each level, each rung of the ladder. That cobra snake begins to rustle around and rise up. It's called the Kundalini rising. And it actually is very dangerous if we try to force this energy, or if we bypass the issues and the challenges of our life and just pretend, yeah, no, I'm there. So there's a lot of opportunity for growth and evolution on all pathways, obviously, but on this particular pathway, we're not denying that there's a positive and a negative quality pole, like a battery charge, in each and every one of these levels. Now, there's also, as we're as we're traveling upward from the base of the spine to the top of the head, each time we come to another level, each level we have been corresponding with the work of Jacqueline Small in Awakening in Time. Time is the fourth dimension. There's no width, there's no length, and there's no height to time. It's all mystery. We don't know how long we're going to be here. And so when we're awakening in time, we're awakening in this moment in time. As mentioned, Jacqueline Small is both a yogini and a psychotherapist, and she works with the brain and she works with the whole body. When we get to the fourth level, she introduces us to the idea of our heart, but she also, in each level, gives us a connection to the glandular system in the body. So the adrenals in the first level, the sexual organs in the second level, the pancreas in the third level. And when we get to the fourth level on our demo, we'll touch in on where we're at this point in time. So it's a journey. And as mentioned, at the end of the third level, we've reached the waistband on our stick figure map. And this is where the rubber meets the road. And we either learn how to dance life and endure what comes to meet us on our path, not as a victim, but as an explorer. And as we endure, something happens, and that's what we will work on when we get to our demo in a minute. So let's begin with a poem, which we've been doing with each of our levels. And this poem just came to meet me this morning when I opened up a newsletter blog post that I get pretty much every day from Mystic Meandering. And she's been a member of our community in the past. I don't know if she's still connecting to us, but I love her work. And what she offered today is a little longer than our others, but here's our opening. You can consider this a meditative moment, so you can just sort of sit quietly and take this in. She says, I woke relaxed, as if a burden had been lifted and my whole body had opened up to a vastness within, a deep openness. I breathed in the universe, and the universe breathed me. A word came. The word was comfort. I felt it viscerally, tangibly, and let myself sink into it. Comfort. Immersing myself in the feeling of the word, letting it fill me, expand me, I felt exhilarated once again, wide open, feeling this internal comfort from an unknown source within, an unknown spring flooding the system. I woke relaxed by Mystic Meandering. So as we think about comfort, we can't really get into a comfort zone until we have investigated and actually made peace with our awareness of the first level, safety and security, standing on our own 2 feet, or feeling scared and afraid of our life if we're on the negative end of that spectrum. Not to judge, but just to recognize, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid. I have to remind myself on a regular basis, don't be afraid of your life. Don't be afraid of your own life. I actively tell myself that when I feel those, what do they call anxiety? Free floating. Yeah, the free floating anxiety that washes over us. Oftentimes it comes to meet me at just around 10 o'clock in the evening. I'll just get washed over with anxiousness. And the first thing I do is I go and get a large tumbler of water. And I just drink water as I look out the window. I have a beautiful view, so I just drink my water as I look out the window. Then I'll generally take the time to count, pressing the tips of my fingers. 10 in-breaths, in, and out, pressing, 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 because all these nerve endings are at the end of the fingers. I could probably press my toes too, because there are nerve endings in the end of our toes. And we want to activate our nervous system to bring it back into alignment. We want to honor it. Say, I know you're here, nervous system. And right now, everything's feeling frazzled and out. Maybe sometimes it's completely out of control. So in these creative levels of energy that we're looking at building a toolkit. All of the work that we do on this channel and in our community is about bringing ourselves back home and knowing that we live inside of our own sense of self. So the fourth level of energy is a huge deal. We did 2 parts for the third level, and it hopefully gets us organized and oriented to the fact that we want to break through that waistband so that the heart can open. So I'm going to turn to our demo, and we'll add our colors and our other aspects of our connection to this fourth level of energy, and recognize that this is actually, this is home base. We can tap the thymus gland right here, which is the gland that goes with the fourth level. And I know, being raised Catholic, we would do mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa, and we would tap the thymus gland with our fist. And I never understood what that meant as a child, but I've learned as an adult that it actually activates this growth point within our physical body in a way that you could do some research on the esoteric aspects of the thymus gland. Let me turn the camera and we'll go back into our demo zone. And so let's see about that. Okay, here we go. So when we get to the fourth level, we are above the waistband. We remind ourselves that for most of us, all of us, we default. We fall back into the first, the second, and the third levels of energy. When we are frightened, when we are distracted, when we are confused, this is where we tend to fall. And we forget we have roots, and we forget that we are able to work with each level with the high end of the battery spectrum or the low end of the battery spectrum, whichever one we feel we are actively engaging. So if you go back and you check in on the first level, the second level, and the third level, you'll get your keywords. They're very rudimentary keywords. As I mentioned, I've got a huge library of all of these keywords, keep adding to them over the years, but we're working simply so that we're not overwhelming ourselves. By the time we get to understand how the first level gives us the option of grounding and rooting ourselves like a beautiful tree, and thinking of these roots in a tripodic way where there's real stability, we can really feel grounded and centered and connected to the earth beneath our feet. That gives us a sense of stability and security. It's of our own making. As my teachers remind again and again, no one's coming. No one's going to rescue me or you or any of us. This is a do-it-yourself kind of journey that we're on. And that feels overwhelming until we understand we've got toolkits. And not just this toolkit. You've been reading, you've been learning, you've been experiencing, you've been studying all through your life. And so, as I said in the very first video introduction, that I don't know any more than anybody else. This is just the love of my life that I've been able to garner this deep relationship with this energetic ladder. I don't feel alone. I don't feel victimized, and I don't feel put upon by life unless and until anxiety comes. And then I've got those tools I just mentioned, drink water, breathe deeply, and that generally settles me down. I also write. I've been a writer for since I was 19, and that also helps me get the energy out on the page where I can then look at what I'm thinking about. And again, it's not free floating. Things become more focused. In the fourth level, we're working with the color green, and we're working with a disc at the heart. And so we can just color that in. We look at Jacqueline Small's short form description of the energy, and she says that this is the fourth level. Fourth chakra is the heart chakra, and it is the thymus gland. You can write those in. It is the thymus gland, and it is the heart chakra, which is issues concerning love. So we'll just put love. It's the heart. It's love. And this is where it all really begins to, we could say, coalesce. My little story. I think it was 1982. I felt compelled to go and volunteer at a rape crisis center in Cleveland. So, of course, I had to take training. And when I took the training, it was very eye-opening for me. I learned that a rape victim is in a war zone, and that just like in any war zone, the process of that experience, the outcome of that experience creates extraordinary trauma. And 1982, we had not yet identified post-war or war trauma as PTSD. That term did not yet exist, or it was just coming onto the scene. I'd never heard of it, and I didn't know about it. So I was very, my antennas were really up when I was taking the rape crisis training, and so much of it dealt with how we're sort of forced as a victim of sexual violence and trauma, kind of forced down into fear and being ostracized, shunned, and not having a sense of our own self, our own power. It's as if our body's brain can't function correctly. It's extremely disorienting to be victimized, as any of us who have ever experienced victimization of whatever kind can certainly identify with. When we break through the waistband and the heart begins to open, as it did when I signed up for Rape Crisis, I wanted to help others. And what they reminded us of is, in the training of the many, many things that we learned, is that when someone is floundering, when someone is drowning, you don't jump in to try and save them, because the very act of jumping in means that you put yourself into danger. So when someone is floundering, when someone has gone through some sort of a catastrophic trauma in their life, the best thing you can possibly do is kind of hand them, give them a stick, a long piece of bamboo, or something that they can grab onto, and then you can pull them in. You can help them come back and get out of the deep water of their experience, as a metaphor. So I was very curious about that, and it began to really connect some dots for me. We're looking at electrical energy as it moves through the body. We can substantiate the small amount of information that's coming through this series with our own research. One of the things that we can research is the way that the chakra system channels energy through the body, and each level wakes up some part of our deeper, wider evolutionary growth and development. So this training really shook me to the core in what I learned and what I experienced, because some years earlier, 10, 12, like 14 years earlier, I had been in an entrapment, and I had been sexually assaulted by 3 members of a very well-known, nationally known motorcycle gang. And I was bringing myself up and out of that experience by studying the master artists and by making marks on paper and learning how to draw my my energy out onto visible format through art. Just doing it intuitively, doing it on my own, deep study. But when I took this training, it opened my heart to myself in a new and deeper way. The fourth level of energy, as Jacqueline Small reminds us, pertains to issues that are concerning love, giving love, receiving love, and the loss of love. And when we get forced back down into these below the waist levels of energy, oftentimes it's because we don't feel we are worthy of being loved. It's often, completely hidden from our conscious awareness and our rational points of view. We don't know, but it's so great to do this kind of study and research because things begin to open. And as I've mentioned, if you have a copy of Jacqueline Small's Awakening in Time, she goes deep into each level of energy with what the gifts are and what the healing is required of each level when we have been wounded. And every one of us has been wounded on one or more of these levels of energy. When we begin to look at the levels of, or the keywords on our batteries of the positive and pole and the negative pole of the fourth level of energy, we can begin to put into practice what this particular point in our journey represents. So keep in mind, we're not even halfway in our complete journey from 0 up to 9th level. We're just reaching the halfway point, this being the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, and now the 4th level of energy. When we get to the 5th level of energy, things expand exponentially. So stay with us and see if you can make your notes in your journal regarding what's coming to touch, move, and inspire you with each level in your own way. And then when we get to the end of the series and we wrap it up, you'll be able to revisit any of these levels in the series by saving all of these videos to your own computer, putting them into a folder, and then being able to come back to them later. So don't feel like you've got to get somewhere now. We're climbing the ladder. We're exploring, and we're exploring each level in turn because we want to have these pieces and parts in place when we get to the close of the series, wrap it up around in another really beautiful, or we could say circle, and create that container for our awareness of being healthy cells in the body of the universe. What a gift to the world it is if we can spend our time in that orientation rather than the orientation of being in somehow broken or victimized by our own lives. So the 4th level of energy, the heart level, a friend, dear sister in our community, Joanne, we were at a conference together, about 11 years ago already together. And she and I were in California at this conference, and she called me a heartist. And I never heard that word. And I love words. I love to play with words. I love how words can be taken apart and put back together. I love, for example, how we can be scared down here. But if we take the word scared and we change the way, I'll put it into the red zone, scared can be over here, and sacred can be over here. And it all depends on how we see, where we see ourselves. We're either scared or we're sacred. And that becomes part of our first level of energy experience also. So words are marvelous, and I love them. And I was given that idea of being a heartist. So I pass that along to you as a gift from Joanne, and see how that lands for you, if that fits for you. When we're looking at any level of energy, again, reminding ourselves, each level of energy is like a battery with a positive, let me find my hands, a, a positive and a negative charge. Let's see, how can I do this? I'm working backwards and I'm dyslexic, so it's like really tricky for me. Forget it. So there's a positive charge and there's a negative charge to each energy field. If we look at some of the keywords for the fourth level, positive charge, they're up here. And the positive energy is that we work hard, we set boundaries, we're disciplined, we have some sort of organization or developmental system in our own pocket, we're sincere, and we're loyal. When we're out of alignment with the fourth level or on the negative charge, which gives us words that aren't so friendly, we don't feel so connected to them. But if we look the word up in a thesaurus and we look up its synonym, we can do our own connection in a way that gives us a way to focus on these negative pole energy words so that they can work for us. And these words are intolerance, create, disorder, crude, fixed opinions, limitation, dull. Again, we might not be experiencing any one of those qualities in our own life at any given time, but we might know somebody who's going through a time of limitation or a time of disorder, creating disorder in their experience, or being intolerant, or being dull. They don't have any life force, no guts, no gumption. So it doesn't mean that we specifically are experiencing the negative pole at any given time. However, we want to be open to the fact that, yeah, on any given day, I might be having a fixed opinion. It might have nothing to do with the facts of the situation. I might want to dig a little bit deeper. I might recognize that I'm experiencing a sense of limitation and sort of boxing myself in. So I might want to expand and feel a sense of working hard to expand my sense of what's possible. There's a story from Napoleon Hill. He said he received a dictionary as a gift as a child. And the first thing he did, or as a young person, I'm not sure of his age, but as a young person, he received a dictionary as a gift. And the first thing he did was he went into the dictionary, under the letter I, and he found the word impossible. And he took a razor blade very carefully and he cut out the word and the definition for impossible. He said, I did not want that in my dictionary. And then we've often, perhaps you've heard, and maybe you've seen somebody take the word impossible and write it as I am possible. And that's another way to consider the fourth level of energy, is that when we look at the heart, when we love from the heart, when we work from the heart, we can affirm, I am planning my work and I'm working my plan from the heart. It's the work of my heart. The color is green and it represents the opportunity to explore and grow like a beautiful plant in our creativity. When we are working with the archetype of the fourth level of energy, we're working with the Emperor in the tarot. It's a masculine energy that represents power and represents authority. In the angelic realm that John Randolph Price offers us in the angels within us, he calls this the angel of power and authority. So there's a very strong, active, proactive out in the world. We take our heart's work out into the world once we know what it is and once we feel that we're connecting to our passion. So to access the power of this fourth level requires work. And it's beautiful work because it's the work of our heart, of our passion. And it's a time to build on our vision. Our vision generally comes out of the seed thought that we plant and in the first level of energy. We want to plant a seed and then we want to watch it grow, 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 and just continue to expand as we develop. We want to be structured, we want to be disciplined, and we want to be focused. We could say, even if only for 15 minutes a day. One of the things that we can do with this level of energy is we can draw a square into our journal, and we can identify each point on the square as part of our work. So one of the points of structure on our square would be tending to our health. Another would be tending to our wealth, our abundance, our ability to allow things to come to us, to be magnetically attracted to us. We want to look at our capacity to love, obviously, because it is the fourth level of energy, and it's all about our ability to love our life. And lastly, we want to look at our creative expression. So you might discover other words that you want to put on the edges of your square, which is the representative of the heart space, and see how that falls for you. I'm just offering ideas. That's all I'm doing in this entire series, is just offering us ideas to support us in being healthy cells in the body of the universe, as opposed to being distracted and deterred, sort of tamped down and damped down by our comparisons to the world. This is a place of comfort. We want to come back to our heart. We want to know that in our heart, there is a place that we can, it's a soft place for us to fall, that we can fall into our heart and love ourselves. One of my first learnings as I was recovering from violence was yoga. And as yoga came to me, it came to me through an East Indian yogi, and who had written a book, Introduction and Fundamentals of Yoga, I believe it was the title of the book. I still have the book. It fell and hit my foot in 1972 when I was working in a little boutique in a wonderful arts district. I was unpacking books and putting them on the shelf, and book fell off the shelf and hit my left foot, and I picked up the book and looked at it, and it was Yoga, Introduction and Fundamentals. And I thought, well, I'm buying this book, and I still have my copy. And one of the things that I loved about the book is that it incorporated the yoga philosophies and asanas, but it also has a very healthy sprinkling of poetry by the Upanishads. And one of the poems I've carried with me for well over 50 years now, and it goes like, it's save the self by the self. Never upset the self. The self is the only friend of self, and the self is the only enemy of self. And when we get to the fourth level of energy, issues concerning love, the giving of love, the receiving of love, and the loss of love, it behooves us to know how to save the self by the self, to never upset the self for any longer than we need to know that the self is the only friend of self, and the self is the only enemy of self, the only foe of self. And years later, when I was a member of an organization called PAND, P-A-N-D, Performers and Artists for Nuclear Disarmament, one of the things that we did in our training was we watched a film that was titled Images of the Enemy. And we were schooled in the idea that culturally, human beings are almost universally taught to look outside. We're taught to look outside of ourselves, and there's always somebody to blame. There's always somebody out there, something out there, some reason out there. And for our short time together, we want to keep ourselves self-contained. We want to take responsibility. Remember, I said that one poem from A Course in Miracles, the other in level 1 or 2, I'm responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience, and I decide upon the goal I would achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. So this is the heart chakra. It has everything to do with taking our self-worth and our self-esteem and enduring some aspect of our life that would want to keep us caged inside of this lower zone. We need the lower zone, but we don't want to stay caged here, and we don't want to be stuck here. And we don't want to be so long here that even when the cage doors open, we forget that we can come up to our heart, and we can basically begin to take wing. Got the roots, stable, know where we belong. We belong to our own life and its unfolding. And it's the self-worth that comes from giving birth to our own ideas. Hardest thing in the world. It is so challenging to be comfortable with our own ideas. And then to remember, as A Course in Miracles reminds us, that we teach what we need to learn. So when we get to this 5th level of energy, it reminds me of this image that I keep at my desk. And the image shows the individual crossing an abyss. And the line of the tightrope walker is being held in hand and being measured out as we walk across this cavernous space called our life. This could be in the tarot, this could be where the fool is standing with his little dog, and it can tumble down, or like a Apollinaire, he could fly away, or he could find a way to find a path and we make our own path. So we're working with creative energy, and that means that your own creative ideas can come to meet you with each and every one of these levels. And again, when we get to the end of our series, you're going to be able to see how it all comes together as a power tool that has these steps and stages that we each work through. And we don't just work through our scared sacred once. We don't just plant one seed. We don't just have one time in our life where we question our self-worth or what it is we're going to give birth to. It doesn't just happen once that we are challenged to consider our self-esteem and how we feel and think about our own life and whether we're adequate to our own life. These things come back, they circle back around. We are spiraling up like the snake waking up, like the caduceus of the medical field, where we're intertwining our spine and we're climbing. So, okay, let me turn our camera around and close our session for 4th level with the awareness that we're each a artist. We're each able to, if we choose to, we're able to come back home. This is the home zone. Tap the thymus, get in touch with the sternum. In our next level of energy, we're going to be working from here to here, making a box for 5th level. Lots happens in the 5th level of energy. So we want to have this sense of connection to these first 4 levels. So spend some time with them, talk to them, look at the tarot representation in the major arcana of the Fool, the Magician, the High Priestess, the Empress, and the Emperor, and see what comes to meet you when you do your own sleuthing. This is save the self by the self, never upset the self. The self is the only friend of self, and the self is the only enemy of self. And like the poem at the beginning of our work today from Mystic Meandering, comfort it's our gift to come back to a place where we feel comfortable. Sometimes we don't have anything outside of ourselves. We lose family, we lose friends, we lose our car, our home, our everything. I understand what that feels like. I had that happen when I was 19 years of age, and I lost an infant, and then I was entrapped. It's just like the stories of our lives are so empowering. They're not meant to break us. They're not meant to shake us for any longer than absolutely necessary. There are wisdom tools. There are alchemical tools. There are ways that are metaphysical, beyond the physical. They're not better than other tools. We need everything that we can garner to support us from moving from the shore of birth over to the shore of death. This morning, I was in a meeting with a dear one who is encouraging connection to death with dignity, a topic that I'm extraordinarily interested in. So we find our way, and each of us is in charge. We're responsible for what we see and what we choose. So I'm so glad that you're here. And I look forward to sharing the fifth level of energy with you. And do not feel for 1 minute that this energy work that we're doing with these creative energy fields, that this is something that is just listened to once and you got it. This is the culmination of 55 years of dedication in my own life, and you're dedicated in your own life also. So look at what roots you've put down. Look at where you have found that you feel you are belonging. Definitely check in on yourself daily to see how you care for yourself in terms of your ability to love yourself, esteem yourself. Recognize that that waistband, that belt that we have there on our stick figure map, represents something that must be endured. And we talk about it in a way to lighten up the actual challenge of endurance. We think of it as a dance of energy, and that we can dance with what it is that we have come here to endure, each in our own way. Some a tango, some a waltz, some a eurythmic dance. It's, play with this energy and love the fact that you're the one who gets to choose the way that you engage each of these levels as we're traveling up. And as we've looked at today with the heart, its issues of the heart are very, very challenging. Again, because who's teaching us how to really listen to our hearts? This is Iona. This is Wren House Studio. And this is our opportunity to pay homage to the creative energy fields. And I'm so glad that you are here. I will see you in our next video, hopefully. And I thank you for leaving comments and asking questions, letting me know where I'm missing something, where I might have added something that you know is important. Keep moving.